It is the Sunday night, Monday morning edition of the PFF Forecast. We have just finished witnessing the Philadelphia Eagles improve their draft pick and the Washington Football Team make it to the NFL playoffs. And we're going to go ahead and look at the Wildcard round. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's rock. Okay, we have to spend a couple of minutes talking about the Doug Pederson thing. You are very much, you are okay with what Doug Pederson did.
Okay, let's talk for a second about the effect of sports betting on things like this, right? It's a standalone game. A lot of people were invested in Washington Football Team to win the NFC East. It was a relatively sharp play. I was one of those people. I'm going to be clouded a little bit towards, like, I'm always going to have some bias towards that. You, I think, have some Washington Football Team, but you also bet a little Eagles when it looked like, and it looked to me the same way, that they were going to have a chance to win the game. And I do think that clouds some people's judgment. If this game's happening, this is Kansas City starting Chad Henne against Justin Herbert. Like, who cares? You know what I'm saying? But when a game's on national television, the asymmetry in incentives is stark and acute, right? Like, there's no second thing that has to happen for the Eagles to get a better pick if they lose. It's A or B. And like, I think that plays into it. I think that the Eagles have every right to do what they did tonight. I think they'll say a bunch of things, but it's pretty clear to me that they didn't try to win after the third quarter. And that happens.
I've done a complete 180 in the past 2 minutes. Because here's what I was thinking about. So the reason I was pissed off, look, if you're betting on the game and you're pissed because a coach does something that's for the betterment of his team, go fuck yourself. Yeah. You have no ground.
If you had the Chiefs today, if you had either Detroit or Minnesota, if you had any of those games when you did not know what the motivation would be with both teams, right? If you bet, like the same thing if you bet Miami. I was on Miami a little bit today when I heard of the supposed news that Matt Barkley was going to play the whole game, and that didn't happen. That's on you. That's not on anybody else.
Right. Now, but what I was pissed off about was Nate Sudfeld. Clearly, you're not evaluating him for anything other than potentially like your Gatorade boy for next season. He's terrible, not good at football. And so I was pissed off because that's not giving a fair shake to a guy who I think deserves a chance. Not that Jalen Hurts has been amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but he has made at least some throws down the football field that were catchable, and as a runner can do some things that helps your team out quite a bit. So he deserves a chance. And what I was pissed off about was it seemed like you gave him a chance, then you took it away from him. But I actually think I've turned a little bit on that. Here's why. If Doug Pederson said to himself, look, I'm not going to try and win this game because it's not for the betterment of our team, then I think it is the right move to take Jalen Hurts out because you're doing him a disservice if you're saying, look, you're a good enough quarterback to be a quarterback in this league. We're going to keep you in there, but we're not going to try to win the game. So I'm okay if you've decided you can't have it both ways. He gave Jalen Hurts a chance on that fourth down. If they convert that, they're winning the game.
Yeah.
And they ended up losing by 6. That would have put them up enough to clear the total or whatever, the 21 or whatever. They would have won the game in most situations. So I'm actually okay with it. It sucks because the NFL messed up by not considering this possibility and putting this 100%. On Sunday night.
Because we saw last week when they announced the game, they said the Eagles could be playing spoiler, right? And I don't know, I sort of immediately recoiled. The NFL has done this when, 2017, there was Carolina versus Atlanta was a meaningful game. New Orleans, Tampa was sort of but there wasn't that 2018, there wasn't a division title game, but there was a, Indy, Tennessee was for a wild card. The same play, win you're in, lose you're out. Same things happened the last 2 years for divisions then. There wasn't that clear thing. And I get it, though. I sort of get 2017, the league's booming a little bit. 2020, like there are revenue issues, right, to consider. And so I understand wanting to put a game on Sunday Night Football, but you know the risk. And here's the thing. There's nothing the league can do short of telling Doug Pederson, hey, please play out the string here. And they probably didn't. They probably just thought like there was, unwritten rules. We talked about this with Steve Kornacki when he was on here. Unwritten rules, the first person that breaks them has a huge edge. And Doug Pederson just got himself, 2 spots in the draft?
Yeah, it went from 6th to 9th.
3 spots in the draft for breaking an unwritten rule, and it's his right to do so. And here's the thing: the spirit of the game was not an issue. It wasn't like they just took a knee the rest of the game. And it wasn't like their players weren't playing hard. There were fumbles on the ground multiple times for Washington in that fourth quarter, and the Eagles just didn't get them. But it wasn't like they weren't trying to tackle anybody. They weren't trying to catch the ball. They just put a dog shit quarterback in the game.
The couple takeaways that I had from this were that Doug Pederson obviously knew his job was safe. And in doing so, that's it.
Also, we talked about this last week. He also knows that he's probably, even if his job isn't safe, he doesn't want to work for a team that doesn't support him in trying to have the best opportunity to win in the future, right? Like, I think Pederson's did this far less because of his job security, more just of like security in himself.
I don't follow that.
So last year, or their last podcast, we talked about how Pederson could be a hot head coaching candidate should he leave Philly.
Right.
And I think Pederson would have done this with or without the assurance of his team.
Why?
Well, because if Philly fires him tomorrow, he's going to have a head coaching job with the team relatively quickly. Don't you agree?
I don't know if I agree about that. Usually a guy that gets fired, that there's a little, it's not like there's a lot of really impressive candidates that are out there.
To us, I think, right?
But why, what, I don't understand what he gains by losing the game purposefully if he's not assured of his job.
Well, because
he wants to lose his job.
Well, it's sort of a conditional thing, right? Like if he's not in a place that will let him get a better draft, so think of the 2 branches of the tree. One branch of the tree is I try to win.
So you're saying he'd be doing it to see, will you fire me?
Well, maybe not to see, but to say, look, I'm going to do the right thing, and if they fire me, I shouldn't have been there to begin with. And if they keep me, great. I just got myself 3 spots in the draft. Like, I don't think, you know what I'm saying? That he probably did the right thing. And we're all hypothesizing. It could have been something up top. It could have been Lurie. It could have been Roseman or whatever who told him to act, to do this in the game.
In there.
But if it was Pederson's decision, I don't necessarily know if it was strictly he felt the liberty to do this due to the reassurance that he'd have a job. I just think, because if I'm a coach and this plan is out in front of me, I don't know if I do the exact same thing. I probably make it look a little bit more like I give a shit, right? And, Yeah,
because I think here's the thing. I think you have a real hard time if you get fired and you lose a game like this, getting hot. Like, I don't know. I just think
it's a good question.
That's tough.
It's something where we on the outside probably don't understand it quite as well, but I do know that Philadelphia is in a better position now than they were going into the game.
Absolutely. Here's the last question I have on that. Chris brought this up on the broadcast. Do you think they do that if Dallas is the one that stands to get into the playoffs?
Well, I think they hate Dallas just as much as they hate New York.
Do they?
Yeah.
No. Stop that for a second. Everyone hates the Dallas Cowboys more.
Elliot Shore Parks on Twitter. Doug Pederson says he was coaching to win tonight against Philly. I would have followed up saying I would have followed up question saying how long. Because I do think the first 3 quarters, they went for it on the 4th down, the one where our model and Ben's model disagreed a little bit. But it was like, I think that was the right move. Your offense was horseshit all game. the only reason you got inside the red zone was
4-yard line.
Yeah, the only reason you got in the red zone was because you got an interception off of Alex Smith, and their offense is bad. Your offense is bad. Anytime you get inside the 10-yard line, you're probably never going to get inside again, and they didn't even cross the 50 after that. You got to get 7, and 7 would have won the game. Everybody's all 21-20 wins the football game, folks.
Tying the game at the end of the third quarter, hang a banner.
Yeah.
Hang a banner. It was a very interesting, here's the thing. That game probably would have been dog shit regardless. At least this gave us something to talk about. And here's the nice side effect. If there was a team out of the NFC East that deserves a playoff game, it is Ron Rivera and Alex Smith. And we get to see Chase Young and Terry McLaurin on Saturday Night Football with Tony Dungy calling Tom Brady's playoff game, which I think will be interesting given what we've heard from
47 on the total.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. We're going to go in order. Did you actually guess the lines, or have you looked at the look ahead so many times ahead of it that it doesn't matter?
We didn't even know what the matchups were going to be, so I kind of was like, okay, by the time we knew the matchups, they had lines out there. So
all right. Well,
for the second straight week, I'm not carrying the podcast in that regard.
You can evaluate my guesses, which I made before looking at look ahead lines. And after seeing a few that were talked about during the broadcast in the PFF offices, I don't know how I feel about my guesses. So we're going to go through the playoff slate. We're going to write up our thoughts on each one of the games because it's the playoffs. We have to bet the playoffs baby. Games. Here's what I had a question for you before we started this. When I was thinking about these lines, so normally when I'm trying to guess the lines, I'm really just thinking about the power rating for each team more so than anything else.
Yeah.
In playoff games, though, I'm giving a little more credence to the quarterback. So if there's a bigger quarterback discrepancy, I leaned maybe a point or a point and a half more towards the team with the better quarterback.
I mean, that seems sensible.
Okay. So let's start. Saturday, the first game. This one is Indy going to Buffalo to play the Bills, a team that I think we were on a week or 2 weeks before everyone really jumped on the Bills are the second best team in the AFC bandwagon. I guessed that the Bills would be 6-point favorites.
You're not that far off. It's 6.5. It was 7. I think people like the Colts. I'll say this. I think the people like the Colts for the wrong reasons.
I hate that I'm low on this because I thought I was going to be high.
Yeah. I mean, the Bills.
6 is a lot.
Wow. The Bills are moving. The Bills are working on all cylinders right now. I mean, it's unreal. I know Miami was a huge fraud, and they were only really in position because of their sort of like wonkiness of the schedule and the tiebreakers and stuff. But man, did they beat the brakes off of the Dolphins and in a half, really.
Well, Tua gave him no shot. That's what we talked about when we said, I now don't feel great about the Dolphins because they can't go to Fitzpatrick. And there's a very non-zero chance that Tua gives them no shot. By the way, for everyone that hated on us about saying, oh yeah, don't take a quarterback, Dolphins, you have Tua, he's a rookie. You're fucking wrong. They better take a quarterback.
Well, but it's also, and this circles back to what are the incentive?
This is coffee, by the way.
What is your objective function? The Dolphins have, I believe, higher designs than going 10-6 and making it to the first round of the playoffs. That's why they started Tua to begin with, to figure out if he could be a good enough quarterback to win with. Now what? They got the 3rd overall pick. I mean, shit, did you watch Justin Fields on what was it, Saturday night or Friday night? I mean, the guy, look, there are 3 bona fide quarterbacks in this draft. You better fucking take one because it's like you know Tua could be great, and he's coming off of a hip injury. He was awesome at Alabama. He played in some huge games. He's extremely accurate, but he looked like he couldn't play.
Let me ask you
and
this.
That happens all the time.
Let me ask you this. You put Tua in this draft, where does he go?
I mean, he probably goes at 10. He does what the last left-handed first-round quarterback did, which is Matt Leinart, which in 1 year, he's the best prospect there, and then the next year he's the 10th, right? Like, that's how that happens. And here's the thing. everybody's like, Tua this, Tua that. We're not saying anything about Tua. Good quarterback prospects bust. They just do. It's called variance. You suppress, and look, the Dolphins are a made hand at this point. You got Devontae Parker, who's good. You got Mike Gesicki, who's good. You need to do a little bit better on the offensive line. You got a secondary. I mean, Xavier Howard had 10 interceptions this year. Byron Jones is great. You have pretty good safeties. You have a New England Patriots front seven. And the problem is, if Tua fails, the whole thing falls down.
And here's the biggest point. Penei Sewell could be the greatest left tackle, could be Orlando Pace. Yeah. He will not turn Tua into a great quarterback. If Tua's going to be a great quarterback, he's going to do it with an average fucking left tackle or a great left tackle. It does not matter.
You know who the last really Hall of Fame left tackle that was taken at 3? It's actually the Cleveland Browns in 2007 took Joe Thomas 3rd overall, and they finished 10-6. They were bounced from the playoffs because of a tiebreaker. Miami lost not because of tiebreaker, because they had the worst record, and the rest of Joe Thomas's career, the Cleveland Browns could not figure out the quarterback position. So who cares if he's neutralizing the right defensive end all freaking game? You can't figure out the quarterback again. Tua could be great, but wouldn't you like, especially on a team that you don't need a first-round pick at any other position right now. The team, if you get Justin Fields in there and he turns out to be, Cam Newton good, or he turns out he doesn't even have to be top 10 in the league.
He's
good.
Dak Prescott good.
Yeah, and here's the other thing: you play in the AFC East, and they play for the Buffalo Bills are playing for Super Bowls. They're not playing for 10-6 and making the playoffs. They're playing to win the Super Bowl. And so if you don't play to win the Super Bowl, you are going to be in a position. You're going to have wasted a tank last year.
I'm glad we talked about the Dolphins here. It needed to be talked about because people were angry.
And we talked about this on the pod. It was a great probability question. Indianapolis had a better than 66% chance of making the playoffs, even though they did not control their own destiny, because only exactly one bad thing had to happen, and it happened to the Dolphins. The Dolphins did it to themselves, and the Dolphins should right now be in the playoffs if they put together a game effort against Buffalo. They just couldn't, and the reason was that their quarterback couldn't play.
All he needed was a left tackle. Okay. So I feel about the Indianapolis Colts. What's the right way to say it?
This is the worst possible matchup for them.
It's outdoors in Buffalo against a team that can put up a lot of points. The Colts, not really a team that you feel can put up a lot of points. I'm mad that I'm on the wrong side of this number because I thought this was going to be more like 4.5. I just thought people liked the Colts a whole bunch. But at less than 7, I really like the Bills. I also think this is a super teasable spot.
Yeah, I just actually placed a wager that includes Buffalo as a tease down line. I mean, the gap. I might just lay the points with Buffalo here.
The gap in quarterback is massive.
The gap in quarterback's massive. I actually don't think the gap in coaching is that massive, but I do think it exists. And Buffalo's the team that does it a little bit better. Buffalo doesn't waste downs. They don't waste. I mean, they're just a complete football team in the ways that matter. And I think Indianapolis, like I've said this for a number of weeks, I think Indianapolis is good enough to beat bad teams handily, medium teams consistently, and good teams frequently. I don't think they're good enough to beat elite teams. I just don't think they are.
Buffalo up 4, 5, 6 points in the fourth quarter. Phillip Rivers has the ball and needs to go score a touchdown. It didn't happen. That's going to be intercepted.
Well, and if you have them against the spread, the Bills are not going to kneel off the game. They're going to drive down and throw a touchdown at Diggs and win by 11. To me, that's how they played the whole season. It's why backing their opponent against the spread has been a massive loser for you in the second half of the season if you've done it. Total here's 52. I think that number is probably perfect. I can't back a Bills under at this point. But looking at this, I think and again, this is square because they're a favorite, but I think Buffalo or nothing here is the right play, and I think every single teaser in the world should have Buffalo minus 1.5 in it.
The next game, Saturday afternoon, This one is one of the games that's also broadcast on Nickelodeon, which I'm assuming you have at your household.
Yeah.
Good, so you'll be able to watch that one. It's the Rams and the Seahawks. So I guessed 2 lines here, one with Goff and one with the Wolf. By the way, I didn't think Wolford looked that terrible.
That game sucked.
That game was terrible. Oh, my goodness.
By the way, can we talk about another team that completely melted down this year? Arizona. We talked about this a number of times. This was the penultimate year for Arizona. And they got over their season win total of 7, not of 8, which I think it closed at. If this next season gets Cliff Kingsbury fired or extended.
Yeah, I think Kyler Murray, if healthy, though, is good enough where...
But he's been healthy.
He wasn't healthy down the stretch.
So the Philadelphia game, he was healthy and
There was a 3-game stretch where he was not healthy, and it was noticeable. And Cliff Kingsbury has been living off of the fact that Kyler Murray turned some of his shitty play calls into great play
But that's
calls.
what I mean. So I didn't think Vance Joseph was all that bad this year. I thought their defense was better than the talent that was on it. They have talent on the outside. It sounds like Larry Fitzgerald might retire, but then DeAndre Hopkins ran every route from left wide receiver. It was just like he's a guy who's on the hot seat. Like he has to turn it around, or else that team is going to be looking for another coach.
He really needs to have a Sean McVay moment where he goes like, "What do I need to learn?"
Yeah, and he hasn't had the success McVay's had, unfortunately. McVay took the world by storm and then needed a comeback year this year.
I had with Goff, Seattle is a 3.5-point favorite. With Wolford, 6.5-point favorite.
Those are good guesses. It's 4.5 total, 42.5, which seems to be implying that.
So is the market? Who does the market have in there then?
I would say some blend of Goff and Wolford. I think that the market doesn't like Goff enough to think about them two as the same. But the 42.5 really is a slap in the face to how Seattle's operated over the past 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I tweeted this out today. Seattle is doing this on their own free will. They have Russ. He's healthy. They have 2 receivers who are great. Their defense is playing fine. It's really bailed them out that they've had kind of a crap schedule down the stretch. Do they turn it back on in the playoffs? Remember early in the season, you couldn't back an under the Dallas game was bananas, the New England game was bananas, even the Miami game was all Minnesota game, all those games were freaking nuts. And now they're grinding out fucking 26-23 wins against the 49ers. CJ Beathard has them on a 2-score rope in the fourth quarter.
Okay. However, think about this, though. They had no reason to really try that hard in that game.
I don't know, man.
Did they?
Yeah, but
you're not bringing out your A-plus game plan.
But you're assuming a level of rationality on behalf of Schottenheimer and on behalf of Carroll.
But I don't think it's ridiculous to assume that you wouldn't want to put your best play designs on tape the week before.
They were 6-3 right after that loss. Mm-hmm. So then down the stretch they went 6-1, and you I think astutely said they would win out. You were close,
but it hasn't been great.
It hasn't been great, but the problem is Pete thinks he can win the Super Bowl this way. The positive affirmation of going 12-4 and 6-1 down the stretch, I think is leaving him a little drunk.
Maybe.
Aren't you worried? I mean,
I'm a little concerned that on first and second downs over the past since week 10, the Seahawks are the 13th most pass-heavy team. So, that's concerning. They were doing a very good job of throwing the ball in early downs earlier in the year, and that has regressed a little bit. My faith in Russ has waned as well. I don't think he has a game with a PFF grade over 90 since the first 5 weeks when he was just on fire. But, I don't know, man. This is tricky because I don't know if Goff plays. I really don't have a ton of faith in him in that or that offense.
Yeah, the defense is really what you have to lay into, and Seattle messing up a few times. I mean, that was really what happened to Arizona, right? Strevler threw a pick six to Troy Hill. You had some turnovers and stuff. There really wasn't an offensive anything out of the LA Rams, but their defense was so great. Their defense played really good 2 weeks ago when it was a de facto NFC West title game in Seattle. Basically the matchup between these two teams, the one where Goff got hurt. Like Seattle ended up prevailing, but the Rams defense still played great.
I struggle with this because we always talk about how defensive performance is really predicated on the offense. What can you believe the offense will do? And that's what matters. Reading Robert May's piece on Brandon Staley and the Rams defense, like if you're going to believe in a defense, you want to believe in the methodology that they have, what they're trying to do, right? And he talked so much about how explosive passes are what beat you, and that's what you need to worry about, and that's how they attack defense. So if you're going to bet on a defense, at least bet on one that thinks the right way, not just a team that happens to have a ton of playmakers and have played bad teams.
Yeah.
But I think at 4.5.
I think 4.5 is the right number, don't you? I mean,
I do, unfortunately. I do think I like the over, though.
The last time these two teams faced off in Seattle with Goff, I think the game closed at pick'em. So So I think if you believe that Goff can return to some semblance of health, then you do have to back the Rams here on the premise that not a team doesn't move 4.5 points in power rankings over the course of 2 weeks. But I struggle with this one because there's so much uncertainty with QB. Even the over, I don't know. I'd be pulling my hair out if I want to watch Seattle on an over, even if it's as low as this, just because who knows if they're going to play efficient offense, or they're going to play efficient offense on purpose. They haven't been intentional about playing efficient offense for weeks.
Next game, Saturday night, Tampa Bay playing the Washington Football Team in Washington. I thought that Tampa Bay would be a 10.5 point favorite.
Yeah, it's 7.5, which we gave our numbers to NBC, and we were much closer to a 78% win percentage for the Bucs on the road. I don't think road matters that much.
No,
so
it doesn't.
You have a
hasn't mattered at all this year.
You have a minus 360 for Bucs on the money line here, so you're looking more at about.
What was the home team's record this year? I want to say it was exactly 50-50.
Yeah, I think it was. We have to look. I think it was exactly 500. I mean, there's always going to be the travel and everything like that, but it's not. You're not even traveling different time zones here. To me, and I talked about taking Buffalo in a teaser. I teased it with Tampa. I think the Buffalo minus a half, Tampa minus 1.5 teaser is probably about as good as it gets.
Yeah, Washington struggled to win a game with Philly rolling out half its team and then pulling its one viable quarterback halfway through the game. So, I
just don't see Alex Smith being able to do anything in this game. And Tampa's defense isn't perfect. They let Atlanta give them a game again for 3 quarters. But Washington, Terry McLaurin's great, but in a different way than some of these other receivers are great. And I think most importantly, Alex Smith, I don't know, you got to find in your life, love something as much as Alex Smith loves checking the ball down to a running back. And those two linebackers, they might be out because of COVID. There's the issue with Devin White and all those guys. So that's something to monitor. I don't think they matter that much, though. And I don't think they matter to the point where the Washington Football Team is going to put up enough points. Total in this game, 47. The only way this thing goes over is if Tampa boat races Washington.
I think this is my favorite one. I love Tampa in this one. I think Tom Brady, what I saw out of Tampa over the past couple of weeks is Tom Brady throwing the ball is a lot Antonio Brown getting a little bit involved, Chris Godwin getting more involved. Mike Evans hurt himself, but I think he avoided serious injury, so I'd expect him to grit it out. But, I mean, they can put up points on anybody, and Washington can't. I mean, they couldn't put up points on the Eagles. That should say something. The Eagles' defense is terrible, absolutely terrible. So, I don't know. I love Tampa Bay. Okay, moving on. Sunday. The first game on Sunday, Baltimore at Tennessee. This is the ESPN game. This is going to be interesting. I have Tennessee, Baltimore as a pick'em.
Yeah, Baltimore's favored by 3.5.
Yeah, I think that's a little too rich. Now,
total on the game 54.5. This might be a situation where if you like the Titans, you bet the money line, because the 3 points might not mean as much in a game as it's total as much as it is. Although Tennessee, as we saw today, plays close games. They played a close game in the first matchup.
So our friend, the whale capper, made a good point, which is that most books are way, way, way more leveraged on Baltimore futures than they are on Tennessee futures. In fact, he said it was 5x.
So they're enticing people.
They want people to bet Tennessee
with Ravens futures to want a middle, and essentially, I that makes sense. I mean, there was a reason why there were many reasons, but there was a reason why the number went up in the Washington-Philly game. People who had Washington futures, they wanted, folks to back Philly a little bit there to sort of pay them back in case Washington covered the close, but they covered the final number. If that's the case here, you could get a situation. Whereas if people who are long on Baltimore also want to be like right now on Baltimore, then that number could increase, and eventually you could get some people trapped a little bit.
So when I found that out, I was a little more okay with where I thought this game would be. I know we talked about Baltimore being a dangerous team, and I still think they are a dangerous team. But I think they're a dangerous team if they get to the next round. Like, I don't think they're a dangerous team right now, if that makes sense. Like, who have they beaten of late where you go, oh, yeah, this is a really legit team? I think we've seen that they can blow out bad teams. But we have not seen, where do you have faith that in a close game, as you said, Tennessee is going to play, that Baltimore is going to be able to sustain? Now, I know Tennessee's defense is not very good, but do you have that confidence in Baltimore?
I do. I mean, Baltimore ended the season, again, hang a banner, I guess, but like they ended the season with the highest point differential in the NFL. Like they're
right. They beat the living shit out of bad teams.
Yeah, and the problem is, I feel like Tennessee has bad team components to it. So, like Tennessee, could get buried. Tennessee could be buried in a game by going run, pass on the first possession, giving up a touchdown, going run, pass on the second possession, giving up a touchdown, and then all of a sudden the Tannehill is dropping back to throw from the shotgun where he's not all that comfortable, although he's been good at that. Like, I don't want to say he is a top 10 quarterback for sure, but you see what I'm saying? Like, Tennessee's defense is atrocious, and they don't get pass rush, and they can't cover all that well. And they sort of require playing from ahead to even get the games like they got today against Houston, where they squeaked it out at the end.
Okay.
So I think that there's some bad. I don't think Tennessee's complete enough to look at Baltimore and say, okay, we compartmentalize their opponents into dog shit teams and good teams, and Baltimore struggles with good teams, so this is going to be this is going to be a barn burner. I think Tennessee is sometimes a good team and sometimes not.
So the counterpoint here would be that if there is a team where having a bad pass rush isn't going to be a huge deal, it would be against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, where he's so elusive, like having that mush rush that is not going to be the worst thing in the world. And I mean, as great as Lamar Jackson is, the better quarterback plays for Tennessee, and is playing at home and has two really, really good receivers. And like that has to count for something.
Yeah. I think Tennessee's dangerous. It's why I have Super Bowl futures on them, and it's why for a long time we were talking about them being in the conversation to be the second best team in the AFC. I've just seen them play against Green Bay, right? And I've seen them play against
in the snow.
The snow had nothing to do with that game.
I'm sorry, what?
They lost that game. I mean, nothing to do is probably a little heavy, but they lost that game because they're a class below Green Bay.
The snow had nothing to do with that game.
I didn't say, okay, I pushed back my statement. Don't hold me to that. But they did not lose that game because of the snow. They lost the game because they were a far inferior team.
They lost the game to the degree they did because they were totally unprepared to handle walking or moving laterally in snow.
I don't know. They play in Nashville. Nashville's like a cold weather city, not as much as Green Bay. They're also, again, for every reason that number got bet down from 4 to
weatherman.
They got bet down from 4 to 3.
Get the screen over here. Have you pointing at clouds and stuff.
That number got bet down from 4 to 3 because of the narrative that they would be able to play in snow because of their style of play. In reality, again,
which was a stupid narrative. That's just people not understanding what snow does.
When they've had to play, and again, I don't know how to classify Cleveland in this, but when they play a team that can play at that level, it's just tough for them because they have to be efficient on early down runs to actually stay in football games early, and when they can't, it's curtains for them.
Okay, let's take a look at the Baltimore Ravens' last few games. So they played the Steelers. Remember that game? That was on a Wednesday. Remember that?
Yeah, that game doesn't really count, though, because none of their players were on the field.
Right. That's why I'm going to the next game. I'm saying, do you remember that game? We're going from then on out. Okay. So they played the Dallas Cowboys, a tremendous team. They beat them 34-17. They then played the Browns. They won that game 47-42. That was one of the most entertaining games that there was. They then played the Jacksonville Jaguars, a tremendous football team. They beat them 40-14. They played the New York Giants, another absolutely howitzer of a team. They beat them 27-13.
And a playoff contender.
And then they beat the Cincinnati Bengals, who someone really astutely pointed out just a few weeks ago beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. So therefore, the Cincinnati Bengals, a very real football team, they beat them 38-3. Yeah. They have not played much of anything of a competition since that Wednesday game. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but on the other side of the stick, why are they a road team in this game? They're a road team in this game because of other noisy things, which was against Pittsburgh at home in Week 8. They lost by 4 because they turned the ball over 4 times. They doubled the offensive output of the Steelers in that game. That was, people sort of overreact to that. Against New England, they had 50 more yards than the Patriots in a monsoon. Again, that loss counts. We're not counting these losses. I'm just saying, when they've had to play good teams, the one team that they've had to play who's good, Kansas City, and they got boat raced. So, yes, there is an issue there. But are we pretending here that Tennessee doesn't have, Tennessee is the one game where they got outplayed. They got outgained by 117 yards. I don't know. I just don't think I can back Tennessee here because I just don't think – I think, for one, a lot of people are betting Tennessee here because of what happened last year. I think Tennessee is just simply too – and look, we just try not to coach these games, right? If we were coaching Tennessee, we would do certain things that would make them more attractive as a side here. But we're not. And I feel like last year's games and then basically this entire year winning their first AFC South title, congratulations, since 2008, sort of Seattle-ian in that way. Positive reinforcement for a long-term losing strategy.
Baltimore Ravens haven't played a real team in a month.
Okay,
it's a fact.
It is a fact.
Absolute
but
undeniable
priors
fact.
matter, though, right?
You're going to need a Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are going to have to win this game on the ground. There's no proof anywhere that this passing game is actually efficient or real. They have played 0 teams of late.
I think every other playoff game that's true. I think against Tennessee and that defense, I think.
Why do you hate the Titans?
I don't hate the Titans. I just think that they're flawed. And I wouldn't be surprised if they beat them, but I would not be. I mean, our power rankings have Baltimore. It's about 3 points better. I think after today, it'll probably improve a little bit. I just think.
Yes, behold the Cincinnati Bengals.
Look, do priors matter, though?
Yes, we've had a massively high prior on Baltimore this whole season.
Yeah, so like
this
priors
whole
matter
entire season.
even till playoffs. Priors matter. So that's why people who are trying to dig Kansas City for what's happened to them the last few weeks, people who try to ding,
You
New
just
Orleans.
2 minutes ago were digging Tennessee for losing to Green Bay last week.
Yeah, because of the fundamental issues that are inherent in their team that were fundamental at the beginning of the season. The issue that you have with Baltimore is that it was not fundamental to them going into the year.
I'm sorry, what? The issues I have with Baltimore is their passing game is not a very good passing game.
Yeah, but their passing game going into the year was a decent passing game. It has its moments this year, but has mostly sucked. But
that was its weakness going into the season, though. They have no outside receivers.
But the other side of the coin, as far as
Lamar
their
Jackson
passing
was
game,
incredible
is that
under pressure.
when you play bad teams, like you just don't. It doesn't get tested. I would say their passing game this year has earned an incomplete.
Well, sure. I mean, okay.
Which I think is different than they suck.
So you want to bet Baltimore?
At 3.5. I mean, to me, I think this number is perfect. I don't think it's off at all. I think that they're enticing people to try to bet the Titans.
You hate the Titans.
I had to sweat through a field goal doinking off the upright to get all of my AFC South futures to come in on the Titans.
Oh, so
I like the Titans.
Okay,
this year.
so now we know why you hate the Titans. They played Deshaun Watson, the second best quarterback in the NFL this year, and barely beat him.
Took him to overtime twice almost.
Yeah.
I think this number. I can understand why people want to bet Tennessee. I just can't.
By the way, remember the conversation about would you rather have Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson at the beginning of the year? And it was like a very close. I don't know. It was just a very close race. But I think now if you did it, it'd be very heavy Deshaun Watson, or should be fairly heavy Deshaun Watson. Okay, we move on to the Saturday afternoon game, Chicago at New Orleans. Again, on Nickelodeon, which makes a ton of sense. Trubisky, Nickelodeon. I had New Orleans as a 10.5 point favorite.
The number is 9.5. So the number's a little short.
Okay, 9.5. I don't know. I'm pretty excited to bet against Mitchell Trubisky in the playoffs.
I mean, that's really the only side you can take. It's teaser protected now. It was 8.5. I tried to tease it down, but then the number changed. My issue with New Orleans is that I think they have a difficult time extending on people. I think you really have to make sure that Michael Thomas is playing. I think in a weird way, you really have to make sure that Alvin Kamara is playing in order to bet this. But indoors, the kicking game will probably be fine for New Orleans. A team that has struggled in the playoffs covering the number in the past. I think those are the narratives that people are going to want to bet Chicago with. I just can't do it. So I think I'm New Orleans or nothing here. I can't bet the over either. The Saints are a terrible over team, and the Bears are even worse.
I wish that Chicago had put up a little bit better of an effort against Green Bay.
It was a sweat, though. It was 21-16 in like the fourth quarter.
Yeah, but Trubisky never.
They had a 4th and 1 in Green Bay, like at the Green Bay 25, down 5. I mean, they had a chance. It's just that Green Bay just said, well, Marquez Valdes-Scantling dropped a 70-yard touchdown, and then
I was never worried about Trubisky in that game from the second I saw the first quarter. I just want to bet against Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
It does make sense. New Orleans, -9.5. I love it. especially because everyone is going to talk about how New Orleans. Look at the playoffs a year ago. Okay, thank you.
I wonder though. It'd be interesting to look at the cognitia there, because like I would be surprised if the narrative wasn't also look how awful Trubisky is. That being said, if you like the Saints here, maybe the Washington football team existing in the NFC playoffs keeps this number from booming out to 10.5.
Oh, what do you mean? How?
Well, everybody's going to be focused on how bad Washington is, and the decision that Philly, where like gestures at everything. Chicago's an 8-8 team that also sucks. That's in the playoffs, but no one's going to talk about how bad Trubisky is. So like, I think this game is like sneaky, not going to get a ton of attention because it's like the throwaway game in the NFC. Like people, Washington's existence in the NFL playoffs has always been there. Division winners have always gotten a spot in the playoffs. The Bears have coveted like a 7th seed that's never existed before, and I think people are going to overlook that a little bit and just sort of give New Orleans a pass here, which might deflate the number a little bit. Although these markets are so efficient, but
okay, we move on to Sunday night. Cleveland goes to Pittsburgh, face the Steelers. Rematch of this week, but with totally different teams because Mason Rudolph will not be playing in this game. It will be Ben Roethlisberger. I had Pittsburgh as a 3.5-point favorite.
That's it. That's what the number is, 3.5.
Nice. I had to hit one at some point. Not very pleased with my effort, to be honest. I am torn because I really don't like this matchup for Baker. I don't like the narrative around Cleveland finally making it to the playoffs. It feels like they've kind of won their Super Bowl already. And the way that Baker Mayfield celebrated after picking up that first down to barely squeak out a win against Mason Rudolph, like it made me feel absolutely terrible about taking Cleveland in this game. As much as I think that Pittsburgh is not, the greatest team. The biggest bet to this day that I've placed this season was on Pittsburgh against Cleveland. Now that was a long time ago, but man, it's really hard for me to back the Cleveland Browns in their first time in the playoffs in so long. I just don't have that much faith in Baker.
Yeah. I don't know though, man. So this was one where I think it really depends upon the COVID situation and the injuries and who's playing, because I think Cleveland at full strength is, and this is where that number was when we made a steak dinner bet. You liked Pittsburgh, you and Evan liked Pittsburgh. I liked Cleveland. I think the number got down to 3. Have things changed since then? I think so. I think the Browns have gotten better, and I think Pittsburgh has gotten worse. And does that mean that Baker's going to come out with this new confidence, and he throws a pick 6 to Minka right away, he has a mistake, he's going to go out there and actually like rise above it as opposed to turtling like he did in the game early in the year? I don't know. But I don't think you can lay a field goal or more with Pittsburgh. I think it's ridiculous. They're not a good football team. They're not an elite. They're not a 12-4 football team. They're not a host a first-round playoff game football team. And while I have concerns about Cleveland, I would say that they're probably the only side here.
You want to run it back?
3.5. You like Pittsburgh minus 3.5.
I hate everything about it. I hate it because I have talked about how, I think Pittsburgh was so overrated earlier in the year. But man, Cleveland had to squeak out a win against Mason freaking Rudolph at home.
But they were up 15 at one point in that game. Like that was more of a like.
And they still had to squeak it out.
See, but yeah, I mean. How does that?
Say what you want about Ben Roethlisberger, but
Cleveland wasn't playing at full strength. Like this is again why I want to make sure that Cleveland is at some modicum of full strength. Cleveland's not at full strength. They also have like, Steve Young, take the monkey off my back. Like they had that thing going on, right? Like, they had the weight of everything, not making the playoffs since 2002, not having a winning record.
So you think they play young, wild, and free in this game because they're playing with house money?
Yeah, I mean, the last time Cleveland was in the playoffs, they played Pittsburgh, and they had a humongous lead, and they lost it. I still think they would have covered 3. That was back in 2002. But, like...
Well, look, priors matter.
Priors matter. So, like... Do you think that the Cleveland Browns are a better side than they were back when Cleveland faced Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh like 2 months ago?
Yeah, so here's the thing. Yes, I do, but I also think the playoffs are a different beast than the regular season. It's just different.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't think Pittsburgh, a team that has lost at home. So Pittsburgh hasn't made the playoffs since 2017. The last time they did, they had a home playoff game against Blake Bortles and lost outright. So the playoffs being a different beast, I think is a narrative that makes sense when the team is not necessarily like Pittsburgh. You know what I mean? Like they literally lost to Bortles at home because they didn't know how to run a quarterback sneak.
Yeah, I very vividly remember that game. That defense was very good and got kind of roasted a little bit in that game. But that was a very different Pittsburgh team. Very different Pittsburgh team. Yeah, I mean, so if this is a regular season game, I think I'm with you. I just really struggle. I really struggle to see the Cleveland Browns like getting up for this game with the intensity that they need to. I don't know. Look. Call me, I don't know what the right word is.
Call me maybe.
Sure. But the way that they celebrated getting the first down against Mason fucking Rudolph and the Pittsburgh Steelers, like, I don't know, that just left a really bad and I'm really happy for the Browns and like really happy for Baker Mayfield, and I think they deserve to like feel accomplished for that. But there's just something to like, if you feel that accomplished for
there's a Minnesota Vikings aspect to this where it's like hang a banner because you went 7-9 despite all these problems. Like, but do you think Pittsburgh really has designs on the Super Bowl?
Do I think they can get there? Yeah, of course they think they can get there.
Okay, but you think Cleveland doesn't? You think Cleveland's made their Super Bowl already by making the playoffs?
They kind of did.
And Pittsburgh's kind of like, because I feel like part of that could lead to strenuousness on the fact that Pittsburgh, they play tight, like Baltimore last year, whereas Tennessee was just happy to be there, blah, blah, blah.
So, but here's the thing, though. I actually think Pittsburgh is in a good spot. Here's why. They were front runners for a while. Everyone shitted all over them, including us, and probably rightfully so because they weren't that good of a team. But now they're coming in here. Cleveland is the team that everyone loves. To a certain extent, Pittsburgh can kind of feel a little bit of that underdog mentality. And I think that Pittsburgh comes in a much better spot mentally. Well, they rested as well.
Right. Yeah, Juju has gone 2 straight weeks without dancing on another team's logo. Yeah, sure. None of these numbers are teasable at all, unfortunately.
No, I think I really do like your Buffalo Tampa Bay teaser. I can get on board with both Buffalo and Tampa Bay against the spread. I guess where we differ really is on the Sunday games. I think I would take Tennessee plus 3.5, and right now I would probably take Pittsburgh minus 3.5. As crazy as that sounds, God, I hate the way that sounds.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so because I think we'll write about every game, but we'll probably pick some picks, right? If I were to give, I think that the easiest pick that I would give would be Buffalo minus the 1.5. Sorry, Buffalo minus the half, and then Tampa minus the 1.5 on the road against the football team. If I were to go somewhere else after that, I do think New Orleans is the pick you like. I know Chicago is obviously, last year New Orleans was this favorite against Minnesota. And Minnesota's a lot better football team than Chicago. 2019 Vikings, a lot better than 2020 Bears. Those would be the two that I like the most. I think the other numbers are bang on. If Goff starts and this number gets to 3.5 or less, 3.5 or more, I'll still if I get any information that Goff's starting, I'll probably bet Rams. But there's too much uncertainty there.
All right. We will write these up, and you will have an opportunity to read them if you're listening to this in the morning. Anyways, we'll be back on Wednesday evening. Hopefully, we'll be able to manage a time to get all of the group together as we promised we would to preview the playoffs. Anyways, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you guys later. Peace.